The northern lights danced across the Alaskan sky as Amy checked the readings on her botanical research equipment. Located 50 miles from the nearest town, her small research station was the perfect place to study Arctic plant adaptation. The isolation never bothered her. She had her plants, her data, and enough supplies to last through the winter. That night changed everything. The first sign was a high-pitched whine that cut through the usual silence of the tundra. Amy stepped outside, her breath forming clouds in the frigid air. Above her, something bright streaked across the star-filled sky, leaving a trail of blue flame in its wake. Whatever it wasn't a meteor. It was changing direction, fighting against its descent. The object crashed 3 miles from her station, sending up a plume of snow and steam. Any sensible person would have called for help, but the nearest phone was back at the station, and something told Amy that time was critical. She grabbed her emergency medical kit, a flashlight, and her heavy winter coat. The snowmobile ride felt longer than it should have. When she finally reached the crash site, Amy found herself staring at something impossible. Half buried in the snow was a sleek vessel about the size of a small plane, its metal skin shimmering with colors that shouldn't exist in nature. "Hello," she called out, approaching carefully. "Is anyone there?" A section of the hull had split open, revealing a dim interior. Steam hissed from ruptured pipes, carrying a strange, sweet smell. Amy's flashlight beam caught movement inside. A hand reaching out. But it wasn't a human hand. It had 6 fingers and seemed to glow faintly from within. Amy didn't hesitate. She climbed into the wreck, following the sound of labored breathing. What she found made her gasp. Lying amid twisted metal and sparking wires was a being unlike anything she had ever seen. It was humanoid but tall, nearly 7 feet, with iridescent skin that pulsed with light. Its features were elegant, almost ethereal, but twisted in pain. "Stay still," Amy said, kneeling beside the injured alien. "I'm here to help." The alien's eyes opened. They were like opals, with swirling colors instead of pupils. "You understand me." It spoke, its voice musical despite the pain. "Yes," Amy replied, surprised she could understand its words. "I'm Amy. I'm a scientist. Let me help you." "Ray," the alien managed to say. "My name translates to Ray in your tongue." Amy worked quickly, using her medical kit to stop the bleeding from several deep wounds. The alien's blood was silvery and seemed to glow, but it behaved enough like human blood for her basic first aid to help. Ray drifted in and out of consciousness as she worked, mumbling about betrayal and something precious that had to be protected. "I need to get you somewhere warm," Amy said, finishing the last bandage. "My research station isn't far." Ray grabbed her arm with surprising strength. "No time," he whispered. "They're coming. Must hide the pod first." He pressed something into her hand, a small crystal that hummed with energy. Then he pointed to a sealed container near the pilot's seat. It was about the size of a basketball, covered in intricate markings that seemed to move in the flashlight beam. "Take it," Ray said. "Last hope of my people. Trust you. Saw your heart when you came to help." "I don't understand," Amy said, but she carefully picked up the container. It was surprisingly warm to the touch. "We'll explain everything," Ray promised, his light growing dimmer. "Crystal will teach you. Keep safe. Keep hidden." His voice trailed off as he lost consciousness again. Amy knew she had to act fast. Using all her strength, she managed to get Ray onto her snowmobile. The container and crystal went into her pack. As she started the engine, she saw new lights in the sky, different from the aurora, moving with purpose. Amy gunned the throttle, racing back toward her station with her unconscious passenger. She didn't understand what was happening, but she knew one thing. She had just become part of something much bigger than herself, and there was no turning back. Amy spent 3 days watching over Ray in her research station's small medical bay. The alien drifted between consciousness and fevered sleep, his iridescent skin growing dimmer with each passing hour. During his lucid moments, he taught her what he could about his people. "We are the luminary," he explained, his voice growing weaker. "For 10,000 years, we guided hundreds of worlds toward peace and prosperity. But power breeds jealousy, even among immortals." Amy listened while checking his wounds, which refused to heal despite her best efforts. The crystal he had given her sat on a nearby table, pulsing softly in sync with Ray's heartbeat. "My brother," Ray continued, "led a rebellion against our ways of peace. He believed we should rule through force, not guidance. When I refused to join him," he paused, pain crossing his ethereal features, "he sent assassins. I barely escaped with our future." Amy glanced at the container she had recovered from the crash. It hummed continuously, maintaining a perfect temperature despite the Arctic cold outside. "What's in there?" she asked. Ray's opal eyes fixed on her. "The last pure genetic sample of our royal line. My child, created in our deepest labs, enhanced to survive the coming storm." His hand trembled as he reached for the crystal. "This contains everything. Our history, our science, our ways. It will teach you how to nurture the child." "Me?" Amy's voice cracked. "But I'm just a botanist. I study plants, not alien royalty." A weak smile crossed Ray's face. "You think it was chance that brought me to Earth? To you. We have watched humanity for centuries. You possess something we lost long ago. The ability to adapt, to change, to grow stronger through adversity. My child will need these traits." Outside, the aurora painted the sky in sheets of green and purple, but Amy had learned to spot the other lights now. Distant ships, searching. They were getting closer each night. "They're coming," Ray said, reading her expression. "Soon they will find the crash site. I cannot be here when they do." He pressed the crystal into her hand. "You must make a choice, Amy. Take the child far from here. Raise it. Teach it your human strength. Or destroy both crystal and pod. Let our empire fade into history. But choose quickly." Amy looked at the crystal, then at the pod. She thought about her quiet life, her research, her plans for the future. All of that would end if she said yes. But then she looked at Ray, at the hope in his ancient eyes, and knew she couldn't refuse. "I'll do it," she said. "I'll protect your child." Relief flooded Ray's features. He lifted his hand, which now glowed brightly. "Then receive our blessing and our knowledge." His fingers touched her forehead. Amy gasped as information flooded her mind. Languages, star maps, sciences beyond human understanding. When it ended, she knew what she had to do. "The pod will open in 3 days," Ray said, his voice barely a whisper now. "The crystal will guide you. Keep to the wilderness until the child is strong enough. My loyal followers will find you when the time is right." His light was fading quickly now. Amy held his hand, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Thank you," Ray said, "for showing kindness to a stranger from the stars. May your heart stay as bright as your spirit." With those words, Ray's light went out completely. His body dissolved into countless points of light that drifted up through the station's roof, joining the aurora above. Amy wiped her eyes and looked at the pod. Somewhere in the distance, she heard engines. The searchers were getting closer. She had only minutes to pack what she needed and disappear into the wilderness. As she loaded her snowmobile, she couldn't help but smile. She had come to Alaska to study how life adapted to extreme conditions. Now she would have to adapt to the most extreme conditions imaginable, raising an alien child while hiding from an interstellar empire. Time to put her survival skills to the test. The pod opened on a crisp morning in an abandoned ranger cabin deep in the Alaskan wilderness. Amy watched in amazement as the metallic shell peeled back, like a flower blooming, revealing the soft blue light within. The crystal had prepared her for this moment, but nothing could have truly readied her for the sight of the child. He was small, about the size of a human baby, but his skin held the same iridescent quality as Ray's. Unlike his father, however, the child's glow shifted and changed, matching the colors around him. When Amy first held him, his skin took on warm pink tones, almost human-like. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "I think I'll call you Leo." The name felt right. He had a tiny mane of what looked like starlight around his head, and his eyes held the same fierce intelligence she had seen in wild creatures. Those eyes were extraordinary, shifting between human-like blue and the swirling opal patterns of his father's people. The crystal had taught Amy what to expect, but Leo surprised her at every turn. He grew faster than a human child, reaching the size of a toddler in just 2 weeks. His first words came at 3 weeks, not in English or the luminary language, but in perfect botanical Latin, copying Amy as she cataloged the plants around their cabin. "Vaccinium uliginosum," he said one day, pointing at a blueberry bush. His voice chimed like tiny bells. Amy nearly dropped her notebook. "That's right. But maybe we should stick to blueberry for now." Leo's abilities became more apparent as weeks passed. He could regulate his body temperature, allowing him to play in the snow without getting cold. His skin could photosynthesize like a plant, though he still needed regular food. Most remarkably, he seemed to understand and communicate with the local wildlife. Amy documented everything, using the knowledge from the crystal to understand how Leo's unique hybrid nature was developing. The luminary had engineered him to adapt to Earth conditions, but they couldn't have predicted how thoroughly he would embrace his new home. One morning, Amy found him sitting in a patch of sunlight, literally glowing with excitement. Around him, a circle of tiny plants had sprouted through the snow, blooming out of season. "Look, Mom," he called out. He had started calling her that naturally, and it warmed her heart every time. "I helped them wake up." Amy examined the flowers carefully. They were perfectly healthy spring blooms in the middle of winter. "How did you do this, Leo?" He shrugged, his skin rippling with colors. "I asked them nicely. They were sleeping, but they wanted to see the sun." The crystal had warned her about his developing abilities, but this was unprecedented. Leo wasn't just surviving on Earth. He was thriving, developing powers that combined luminary energy manipulation with a deep connection to Earth's biosphere. Not everything was easy, though. Leo sometimes woke up crying, speaking of bad dreams about stars going dark and worlds falling into chaos. Amy knew these weren't just dreams. They were genetic memories of the Empire's current state. Without a true heir, the 300 worlds under luminary protection were slowly descending into civil war. "When will we help them?" Leo asked one evening, looking up at the stars. Amy held him close. "When you're ready, little one. Your father wanted you to understand both worlds first, to be strong in both body and heart." Leo nodded solemnly, then brightened, literally, as he spotted something through the window. A mother moose and her calf had wandered into their clearing. Leo waved, and to Amy's amazement, both moose bowed their heads slightly before moving on. "They say the hunters are gone," Leo reported. "We're safe for now." Amy smiled but stayed alert. She knew the hunters would return eventually. But for now, in their quiet cabin surrounded by wilderness, she could focus on raising this extraordinary child who was both heir to the stars and a true child of Earth. As if reading her thoughts, Leo's skin shifted to match the aurora overhead, and he snuggled closer to her. Together, they watched the lights dance across the sky, mother and child, human and alien, creating something entirely new under the endless Alaskan stars. Peace never lasts forever. The hunters found them on the first day of spring, just as the snow was beginning to melt. Amy was teaching Leo about photosynthesis in their garden when the bird suddenly went silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Leo's skin shifted to a deep midnight blue, his warning color. "They're here," he whispered, his opal eyes wide. 3 ships, trying to hide in the clouds. Amy didn't waste time asking questions. They had practiced this drill dozens of times. She grabbed their emergency pack, while Leo quickly sent a silent message to their wildlife friends. Within minutes, a family of wolves appeared at the cabin's edge. "Go with them," Amy told Leo, helping him onto the largest wolf's back. "They'll take you to the cave we prepared. I'll lead the hunters away." Leo's skin flickered with worry. "But Mom, trust me," she said, kissing his forehead. "Remember what we practiced." As Leo disappeared into the forest with his wolf guardians, Amy started her snowmobile. The crystal had taught her about luminary hunting techniques. They tracked energy signatures. Leo's hybrid nature made him harder to detect, but the snowmobile's engine would make a perfect target. She was right. As she roared through the melting snow, 3 sleek ships emerged from the clouds. They were beautiful in a deadly way, like silver arrows cutting through the sky. They followed her, just as she had planned. Amy smiled grimly. They might have advanced technology, but she had something better: intimate knowledge of the land. She led them through narrow ravines where their ships had to fly single file, past ice-covered lakes where their sensors would be confused by the reflections, and through dense forests where they couldn't maintain visual contact. But the hunters were clever. One ship broke away, doubling back toward the cabin. Amy's heart raced until she saw the massive shape rising from the trees. A bull moose, the largest she'd ever seen, charged straight at the ship. The startled pilot swerved, clipping a tree and spinning out of control. "Thank you," Amy whispered, knowing Leo's animal friends were doing their part. The remaining ships were still on her tail when she reached the old mining complex. Its metal structures would play havoc with their sensors. Another trick the crystal had taught her. She cut her engine and slipped inside one of the abandoned buildings. The hunters landed, disembarking in their glowing armor. They looked like Ray had, but their light was harsh and artificial. They spoke in the musical luminary language, which Amy now understood thanks to the crystal. "The child must be here somewhere," one said. "The human is just a diversion. Then why can't we trace any luminary energy signatures?" Another argued. "This is a waste of time." Amy moved silently through the buildings, placing small devices as she went. They were simple things she had built using knowledge from the crystal, passive resonators that would amplify any energy readings in the area. When the devices were in place, she started her snowmobile again and raced away. The hunters followed, their ships lifting off in pursuit. That's when she triggered the resonators. The entire mining complex lit up with overlapping energy signatures, creating a confusion of false readings that would take hours to sort through. By then, she would be long gone. Amy took a winding route back to the cave where Leo waited. She found him teaching the wolf cubs how to glow faintly in the dark, his own skin shimmering with playful colors. "Mom." He ran to her, his relief visible in the bright patterns flowing across his skin. "The animals say the bad ships are leaving." Amy hugged him tight. "They'll be back, little one, but we'll be ready." That night, as Leo slept surrounded by his protective wolf family, Amy studied the crystal again. The hunters would return with better equipment and smarter tactics. She needed to stay ahead of them, keep learning, keep adapting. But watching Leo's peaceful face, his skin gently pulsing with starlight, she knew it was worth it. He was the bridge between two worlds, and she would do whatever it took to give him the chance to grow into who he was meant to be. Outside, the wolves howled, not in mourning, but in celebration of the family they had chosen to protect. Summer arrived in the Alaskan wilderness, bringing with it an unexpected discovery. Amy woke one morning to find their cabin's garden had transformed overnight. Every plant had doubled in size, and flowers that shouldn't bloom in their climate were bursting with color. In the middle of it all sat Leo, his skin shimmering with patterns she had never seen before. He was hovering several inches off the ground, surrounded by a soft golden light. "Mom," he said, his voice carrying an echo of music, "I can see them all now. Every plant, every tree, every living thing, they're all connected." Amy approached carefully, her scientific mind racing to understand what she was seeing. The crystal had mentioned that luminary children went through developmental phases, but this was different. This was something new. The plants. Leo continued, gently touching a flower that seemed to lean into his hand. They remember the old times, when your people and my father's people first met, thousands of years ago. This was news to Amy. What do you mean? Leo's eyes swirled with ancient knowledge. The luminary didn't just find Earth by accident. They came here because Earth life had something special. The ability to change, to evolve. They took samples, studied them, but they never fully understood the power. As he spoke, Amy noticed something extraordinary. Her own skin was beginning to glow faintly, resonating with Leo's energy. She had assumed the subtle changes in her body over the past months. Increased strength, sharper senses, faster healing, were side effects of using the crystal. Now she understood it was something more. "Mom, you're changing too," Leo said excitedly. "The bond we share, it's making you more like me, and I'm becoming more like you." The plants say this is what was supposed to happen. Annie remembered Ray's last words about choosing her specifically. Had he known this would happen? Had the luminary engineered Leo not just to survive on Earth, but to create a bridge between their species? Their revelation was interrupted by a distant humming. Leo's skin shifted to warning colors, but then he relaxed. "These ones are different," he said. "They feel friendly." A ship appeared above the trees, smaller and less threatening than the hunters' vessels. It landed in the clearing, and its door opened to reveal a tall figure that glowed with a warm, familiar light. "I am Mira," the figure announced in perfect English. "I was Ray's most trusted advisor. We've been searching for you since we detected the unique energy signature of a hybrid transformation." Amy moved protectively in front of Leo, but he stepped forward, his skin pulsing with curious patterns. "She's telling the truth, Mom," he said. "She has the same light as Father." Mira knelt before them. "What you have achieved here is remarkable. The bond between you, it's unprecedented. You've unlocked the very thing that Ray hoped for, a true fusion of luminary and human potential. The Empire needs this," Leo said suddenly, his voice carrying wisdom beyond his years. "They're all fighting because they've forgotten how to grow, how to change." Mira nodded solemnly. 300 worlds are falling into darkness because they cling to old ways. But you, she looked at both Amy and Leo, you represent something new, something that could save everyone. Amy felt the truth of it in the subtle glow of her own skin, in the way the plants around them seemed to dance with possibility. She and Leo weren't just guardian and child anymore. They were the beginning of something that could change two civilizations. "What happens now?" Amy asked, though she already knew the answer. Leo took her hand, his skin matching her newfound glow. "Now we help them remember how to grow. Together." Above them, the summer sky seemed to shimmer with potential, while around them, the garden continued to bloom with impossible flowers, a small preview of the changes they would bring to worlds beyond the stars. The real journey, Amy realized, was just beginning. The journey to the Empire's capital took 3 Earth days through what Mira called fold space. Amy spent the time watching Leo adapt to space travel with remarkable ease. His skin would ripple with stellar patterns whenever they passed through particularly beautiful sections of space, perfectly mimicking the cosmic display outside their ship's windows. "Look, Mom." Leo pressed his hands against the viewport as they emerged near a massive ringed planet. "That's where Father was born. The whole planet is alive." He was right. The capital world of the Luminary Empire was unlike anything Amy had imagined. The entire planet pulsed with bioluminescent life, its rings made not of ice and rock, but of living light forms that danced in complex patterns. Their ship descended through layers of floating cities, each one a masterpiece of organic architecture where buildings grew rather than being built. But Amy noticed signs of decay, darkened sections, withered structures, symptoms of the civil war that threatened to tear everything apart. "The light is fading," Mira explained sadly. Without proper leadership, our connection to the living world weakens. Some try to replace it with machines and artificial light, but that only makes things worse. They landed at a vast structure that seemed to be part palace, part garden, and part living organism. As they stepped out, Amy felt Leo tense beside her. A crowd had gathered, hundreds of luminary nobles, their lights dimmed by worry and fear. Among them stood a group whose harsh artificial glow marked them as followers of Ray's brother. "So," a voice cut through the murmuring crowd, "this is what my brother left to challenge me, a human and a hybrid child." Ray's brother, whom Amy now knew was called Bright, stepped forward. His light was almost painful to look at, too perfect, too controlled. He had tried to preserve his power by becoming more machine than living being. But Leo didn't flinch. Instead, he did something unexpected. He knelt down and placed his hand on the ground. At his touch, dormant seeds that had lain sleeping in the palace floors for centuries began to sprout. Tiny points of light spread out from his fingers, racing through the entire structure. "The planet remembers," Leo said, his voice carrying the same musical quality as his father's. "It remembers when we were all one with the light, before we tried to control it." The crowd watched in awe as ancient gardens began to bloom again, their light pure and natural. Even some of Bright's followers found their artificial glow being gently replaced by genuine luminescence. "This is treason." Bright raised his hand, energy crackling around it. "I will not let a half-breed child destroy everything I've built." But when he tried to strike, Amy stepped forward. The months of subtle changes in her body, catalyzed by her bond with Leo, had prepared her for this moment. She caught Bright's energy blast in her bare hand, her skin glowing with the same hybrid light as her son's. "You built nothing," she said calmly. "You only tried to preserve what you feared losing. But life isn't about preservation. It's about growth, change, and adaptation." Leo joined her, taking her other hand. Together, their combined light began to restore the faded portions of the palace. Where their light touched, the artificial gave way to the natural, and the dying was renewed. "Choose," Leo addressed the crowd, sounding so much like Ray in that moment. "Choose between clinging to power and embracing change, between artificial control and natural growth." One by one, the luminary nobles began to let their artificial enhancements fade. Even some of Bright's closest followers turned away from him, drawn to the authentic light that Amy and Leo shared. Bright, seeing his support crumble, backed away toward his ship. "This isn't over," he snarled. "The Empire will not survive this weakness." But looking at the renewed light spreading through the palace, the awakening gardens, and the hope in the eyes of the crowd, Amy knew he was wrong. This wasn't weakness. This was evolution. And it was just beginning. 10 years had passed since Amy and Leo first arrived at the capital. The change they brought had spread across all 300 worlds of the Luminary Empire, but not through conquest or control. Instead, it spread like a garden growing, naturally, peacefully, one world at a time. Amy stood on the balcony of the living palace, watching Leo as he conducted his daily connection with the Empire's worlds. Now a teenager by Earth standards, he had grown tall like his father, but his features carried hints of human warmth. His skin shifted through complex patterns as he communicated with distant planets. "The coral forests on Lyria are blooming again," Leo reported, opening his opal eyes. "And the crystal peaks of Centauri Prime have started singing for the first time in a century." Amy smiled, her own skin glowing softly in response to her son's joy. She had fully embraced her transformation over the years, becoming something neither fully human nor luminary, but a bridge between worlds, just like Leo. "What about Earth?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. They had maintained a special connection with their home planet, establishing hidden gardens where humans and luminary could meet and learn from each other. "The Alaska Sanctuary is thriving," Leo grinned. "The wolves still guard it, you know." They passed down the story of their glowing friend to each new generation. Their peaceful moment was interrupted by Mira's arrival. Despite the years, she looked the same as the day they'd first met, though her light had grown stronger through her connection with the renewed empire. "The Council of Worlds is gathering," she announced. "They're ready for the announcement." Amy and Leo followed her to the Grand Chamber, where representatives from all 300 worlds had assembled. Some appeared in person, others as projections of pure light, but all shared the same restored luminescence that had replaced the artificial glow of the old regime. Leo stepped forward to address them. At 17, he had grown into his role not as a ruler, but as a guardian of balance between all worlds. For 10 years, he began, his voice carrying the music of stars. "We have worked to heal what was broken, not by imposing our will, but by remembering our connection to all living things. Today, we take the next step." Amy joined him, and together they revealed their project. A seed of sorts, but one that contained the combined knowledge of human adaptability and luminary wisdom. "Each world will receive one," Amy explained. "When planted, it will grow into a garden of unity, a place where all species can learn from each other, where change is celebrated rather than feared." The announcement was met with joy, but one elder asked the question that surely worried others. "But what of Bright and his followers? They still lurk in the outer systems, clinging to their artificial ways." Leo's skin rippled with confident colors. "They are welcome to return whenever they're ready to embrace change. Our light will always be here to guide them home." As if to emphasize his point, the entire palace hummed with life. Gardens bloomed spontaneously throughout the chamber, each flower a perfect blend of earth and luminary species. The representatives watched in wonder as tiny points of light, like the fireflies Amy remembered from Earth, danced through the air. "This is what Ray dreamed of," Amy said softly. "Not an empire of power, but a garden of worlds, each unique, each valuable, all growing together." Leo nodded, his light pulsing in harmony with the living palace. "And it's what we'll continue to build, one world at a time." As the council dispersed, each carrying a seed of hope back to their worlds, Amy and Leo returned to their balcony. The capital planet shone below them, its rings of living light dancing in eternal patterns. In the distance, they could see ships departing for distant worlds, each carrying the promise of new growth, new connections. "Ready for tomorrow's challenges?" Amy asked her son. Leo's skin shifted to match the starlight around them. "With you beside me. Always." Together, mother and son, human and luminary, they watched the galaxy spin beneath them, not as rulers of an empire, but as gardeners of a cosmic garden, helping life flourish in all its wonderful forms. The universe, they had learned, was not meant to be controlled. It was meant to grow.